Have God ever asked you something you felt like you couldn't do, too hard, or you're not capable of? Has God ever asked us to leave an abusive, unhealthy relationship? Has God ever asked us to let go of addictive, unhealthy behavior? Has God ever asked us, invite us to look at someone with greater dignity and worth, or look at ourselves similarly at a time when our small-mindedness cannot imagine seeing that person or ourselves anything than a problem? And yes, Jesus does seem at times to ask that which is difficult, if not impossible for us. And like the rich man in today's gospel, we turn away sad. So many times in my life, this is the case. And yet, as St. Pope John Paul II says in one of his encyclical, that God in Jesus never tires us, giving us second chance, third chance, and always calls us like that rich man. That one day, God's relentless trust will wear down our fears. And the very end of today's gospel gives me so much hope. For human beings, it is impossible. But not for God. All things are possible for God. And even more than what Jesus says, it's what he does. 3 times in Mark's gospel, this version of this difficult gospel, 3 times Mark the evangelist used the same Greek verb, to look lovingly, to look with love, to look while loving. It's as if Jesus knows before he asks something challenging, he prepares the disciples, the rich man, and us. The first time in today's gospel, Jesus looked at this man with love and he says, "You're close. Go sell all your possessions, give to the poor. You will have riches, treasures in heaven. Come, follow me." The second time when the disciples were like, "Oh no, this is so hard." And then Jesus looked at them with love and he says, "Yes, it is hard for someone with wealth to enter the kingdom of God." And at the end of today's gospel, when now the disciples were exceedingly astonished, like shocked, Jesus looked at them with love. Then he says, for human beings, yeah, it is impossible, but for God, all things are possible for God. It's like Jesus is like a mother who sees her son with a big splinter, and the son is crying, focus on this pain, this wound. And a good mother would look at her son and say, "Honey, look at me." And while her son is distracted by looking at her loving gaze, she pulls out the splinter. And God in Jesus does this for us. Asks us to grow, and it's not easy. And to prepare us. Not to focus on ourselves or on what's difficult. And you like me, like the rich man, I do this a lot. Over self-reliance. Focusing on what I can or cannot do. Like the rich man. And we know that no one can save themselves by doing that, even though we try. And we have billion-dollar self-book industry to tell us, if we're not careful, that we do these things, we can save ourselves. Or like the rich man in all of us, or the rich person in all of us, we focus on our mistakes and that we're never enough. And yet, whenever in my life, when I let the gaze, the tender gaze of the Lord, then like that child looking at his mother's tender, strengthening gaze, the splinter is pulled out. My unhealthy attachment, the ways in which I define myself, the things in which I limit myself and I limit God, falls away. It is a difficult reading, gospel, my sisters and brothers. But the gospel is less about letting go of things. It's more about embracing this incredible, surprising strength and love of God. It is about letting a greater love draw our heart, draw our passion, draw our imagination, draw our deeper desire, so that we may have the strength to let the other lesser things in life shed away. The things which we define our worth, the things in which we decide other people's worth. And only a greater love and being drawn to a greater, bigger, more relentless goodness, strength, and mercy of God can you and I be drawn to what we think is difficult, what we think is impossible. At various times in our life, you and I could give our hearts to things which may be based on physical, material possessions, or power, or popularity. Or sometimes we get stuck on our mistakes and our pains and our trauma of the past. Sometimes we run after things that King Solomon in the second reading doesn't run after. He could have run after power, health, even glorious light, and yet he ran after wisdom. And for Catholics, Jesus is the personification of wisdom, wisdom incarnate, the wisdom that penetrates the human hearts and that gets to the heart of the matter. So when Jesus does this, he gets to the heart of the matter. He moves the rich man from the focus on what is hard to focus on what is really in his heart. And yes, at this time, myself and a number of us may be very saddened and angry, not only at the structure which covers up sexual abuse to the weak and the young, but the same structure that might keep women in less influential positions in the church. A system that may be closed, that does not allow outside checks and balance. But when you and I focus on that, we focus on what's impossible. Yes, our call to be joyful missionary is not easy, my sisters and brothers, and not easy anytime, not easy in this time. And when we let the loving gaze of God in Jesus, like a mother, like a good parent, one who believes in us, who trusts in us, then we get to the heart of the matter of our faith. A relationship of greater trust and love. When this happens, you and I could imagine the impossible. And you and I together with God, despite our many challenges in life, together, all things are possible with God. I encourage you to stay a little bit after communion. I'm going to guide just a 2 or 3 minute exercise so we can let this tender, merciful, relentless, patient gaze of God, like a mother, to draw us beyond what is possible.